Administration, there has been some fear and some Administration, there has been some fear and some
Specifically, the chief said there were 46,400 major crimes such as murder, robbery, auto theft, burglary, etc. in 1971, as compared to 50,391 in 1970. This represents a drop of some 7.9%. Dyson said this was the first drop in major crime in Dallas in 10 years. Other significant decreases were in the number of murders. Those figures were down 14.5%. Robberies in the city of Dallas were down 2.5%. Burglaries showed a decrease over the year of 6.1%. And auto thefts showed a decline of 9.7% over 1970. On the other side of the ledger, the number of rape cases showed an increase of 6%, and assaults showed the biggest climb, up 20.1%. Chief Dyson said one of the factors contributing to the crime decrease was greater community participation in Operation Get Involved. He added that he hoped that this decrease would be only the beginning of a trend toward continuous reduction of crime in the city of Dallas. Jerry Park, Channel 8 News, on the move at the Dallas Police Department.
To date, that the team would gel about this time and would then make a run for it. Do you agree with it? How do you feel the team's coming along?
Well, we've been playing much better in, I'll say, the last 15 ball games, basically because we're getting used to each other, learning the offense a lot better, and this is something that we all thought about at the beginning of the year, is that you have a new coach, you have new players, everybody's new to each other, and it's going to take time. We were unfortunate in the respect that we had a lot of games on the road, which doesn't help you gel any faster, and we played a lot of teams that were already in first or second place, which doesn't help either. I think of our 27 losses, 15 or maybe 16 have come to teams that are either first or second place, and of course 7 of them have come to Utah. And if we could wipe that out, we would be in very good shape now. And of course we played more games than anybody in the league, and our schedule's been really hectic, and so it's been a little tough. But when February and March roll around and we get a little better scheduling, I think that we're going to be in much better shape, and I think we're going to win quite a few of the games in the end of the season.
It seems, though, that the new permissiveness has brought out new aspects, such as the fight by the gay liberation for certain legislation in their favor.
The Gay Liberation Front has strived for reform in marriage laws to recognize homosexual marriages. There's the homosexual church. Again, I think this is more of a surfacing of what has been present all along than it is really a new thing. But it forces all of us to realize that we deal with people as persons, to be related to and to be helped. And here in the past, quite often, when a person was a fallen woman or an unwed mother or a homosexual, they were kind of shut out and excluded. And now I think there's an effort to try to say, you know, we want to help you, we want to minister to you. I think this is true on the part of the churches now.
You said there seems to be a trend of going back or changing the trend of the new morality. Are we going back to motherhood and apple pie? And
you know, there's a lot of that on. I notice I listen to the country western and pop a lot, and many of the songs are playing this up. There's a nostalgia in the air. The advertisements carry this theme. So it may be that people are longing for what they call the good old days, which really weren't so good and weren't particularly different from our own. I think there's something a little bit healthy about getting out into the open, the way people feel, and being able to confront it. I'd much rather confront playboyism or permissivism, a new morality, in open confrontation than have people trying to bury it somewhere. And I think this is what's happening.
Having you were closely associated with Mayo, and a lot of older people were concerned that maybe La Raza was going to be a running, screaming youth movement. To what To what extent do you think that you've overcome that? Do the older people begin to understand what you're doing yet?
I think we've been very successful in that area simply because in establishing a political party or any kind of political organization, it entails a lot more, many more aspects of the community life than just the youth. For example, participation in this thing is open, and it's a lot safer for adults to become involved in.
I'm in a position now to release the crime figures for the year 1971 and how it compares with the year 1970. So the major thrust for me
I have decided to return to the United States Senate this year to help preserve. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. To help preserve the balance for the people this year. To the people of Texas, I offer a record of public service and accomplished constructive legislation unequaled by any other Texas senator in any similar period of time.
Mr. Yarborough said during his Austin announcement that the matter of seniority didn't worry him. Of course, he lost the Senate seniority when he was defeated in 1970. But he says effectiveness in Washington is determined not by seniority, but by the regard with which other senators view him. He also discounted age as a factor. Yarborough, who will be 75 before the current term is over, pointed to other men who have done brilliant work into their 80s. And Mr. Yarborough didn't look his age this morning as he sprinted for the Austin airport and a charter flight aboard a small aircraft to Houston. From Houston, he flew to Dallas this afternoon in time to carbon copy this morning's announcement for North Texas newsmen. The former senator claims he hasn't much financial support in Texas. He says his support is from the common man, but he clearly intends to make as big a race as he can out of the Senate race. Phil Reynolds, Channel 8 News on the Move in Austin.
Preston Smith likes to think of himself as the people's governor. Long before there was such a thing as television, a political candidate got elected by the eyeball-to-eyeball, pressing-the-flesh approach in community gatherings. That's how Mr. Smith got to Austin in '68, and he's on that long trail again. 4 years ago, he visited more than 500 towns, appointed some 550 city chairmen to handle local campaigning, and shook more hands in more counties than any other candidate. This year, however, even more people than ever before will see and hear this particular politician. Smith was proud of the job he did on last fall's Face the Nation TV interview program and has taken a liking to the new style of campaign. He'd like to think he's the most available governor Texas has ever had, and in the next 4 months he hopes to answer any type of question radio and television reporters can throw at him. But even the magic of television won't keep Preston Smith completely away from the style he knows and likes best. For Channel 8 News on the Move, this is Judy Hanna in Carrollton.
Jeff Mead is the driver and team leader. Mike Thompson rides in back with a patient on an emergency run. We made 2 runs today, both calling for resuscitators. Each man in this team must be physically fit for the rigors of moving patients quickly to and from the ambulance. It's not an old man's job, nor is it good for married men. Jeff and Mike are both single. They work 24 hours on, 24 off. Each is qualified with an advanced first aid card and is a graduate of special schools on care of the injured and defensive driving. Both are currently enrolled in the Emergency Medical Technician's 100-hour course. Sparkman Hillcrest has 9 units, half the city's complement. Sparkman says it costs them $375,000 a year for the 32,000 calls they make, about $40,000 a year for each unit. Jerry Park for Channel 8 News on the Move.
Commissioners chose this location for 2 primary reasons. First one was they felt that they had a very good buy. The second one was that they felt that it was very close to the courthouse and to all areas downtown.
What do you hope to use this for eventually? I understand you're going to pump gasoline here primarily as you get started with it.
The time set to open is February 1. It will be used for gasoline, tires, oil, repairs, and all such items of that nature as one would normally do in a service station and garage. Ultimately, I believe it's the hope of the commissioners to form a car pool, attempting to reduce the cost of the automobile expense and the automobile allowances that now exist.
Our current automobile allowances, or I should say last year's, were over $400,000. What kind of a savings can this $57,000 investment here give us?
We are counting on from 10 to 15% savings on the $400,000.
This is the site of the 6th Annual Fort Worth Chamber of Commerce Economic Outlook Conference, and as usual, the outlook appears rosy. This is the kind of meeting at which businessmen sit around and tell each other how wonderful things were in '71 and how much greater they're going to be in '72. However, all of this has the ring of pulling the wool over your eyes, and unfortunately, the wool appears to be pulled over the eyes of businessmen. Yesterday, Fort Worth City Planning Director David Farrington appeared before the Tarrant County Commissioners Court, saying that Tarrant County's image outside the state of Texas is bad. I asked one of the speakers at today's conference, Fort Worth architect Preston Guerin, whether he agreed or disagreed with the statement. He said he strongly disagreed.
With the exception of the housing industry, Fort Worth does have a good climate, and if you consider not Fort Worth but the county, the housing industry has been strong in this area.
Optimism is an uplifting thing, but not when it comes to the exclusion of recognition of problems. And apparently there is some problem with the economic growth of Tarrant County, Fort Worth in particular. When asked about the image of Tarrant County to an outsider, a columnist for Business Week magazine, William Franklin, shrugged and said, well, it's all just Texas. And apparently, Tarrant County is going to have to do something about altering that image. Jay Lewis, Channel 8 News on the Move, Fort Worth.
Hello, how are you? I'm fine.
Sure enjoyed my visit your home, you know.
Well, I'm so glad that you could come. I want you to meet my sales manager before you leave here. Phil, Staff, there's your signature.
Y'all get me a phone.
Do you need a sign?
I think that everybody knows. I think most of them know, Dr. Governor.
The belt and pole here had me running 6 in a 5-man race once. So I got up and I went to the door. And I opened the door and they were walking off. And I said to them, say, would you folks like to visit with the governor? And the man looked around at me and he said, no, we don't have time.
Varo Incorporated of Garland is one of this city's largest industries, and since 1946 it has relied heavily on defense contracts as its mainstay. But those defense contracts have not been coming quite so heavy in the last few years. Varo, quite frankly, has been in financial trouble. A year ago, they brought in a new troubleshooting president, Mr. Roy Erickson. I asked him if Varo is still in financial difficulty.
There's been a lot of conversation about the company having problems. It's absolutely and obviously has been a fact.
Well, of course, now Varo has always relied heavily on defense contracts for its existence. For instance, the night vision equipment that we're looking at right now, this has been a big item with the military. Does it have commercial application? Can you go the other way?
Well, the commercial application of the night vision capability that we currently have has only really started, though night vision has been in existence in its this present design for over 10 years.
Using this as your mainstay, in other words, your number one item, is Varo here to stay?
Varo, that's the total objective of this company, is to be here and to stay here. We have made pretty good strides in the past few months to ensure this particular possibility. I frankly would not like to be with this company in any other city but in the Dallas and the Garland area, for the simple reason that you have people that are dedicated to working and achieving a goal that normally you don't find in other parts of the country.
Mr. Erickson readily admits that in pulling this company together, the corporate staff has been trimmed drastically, and the productivity of those workers remaining is up 53% over last year. A year ago, Varo had 12 divisions. Now there are only 5. 3 were merged into one division here in Garland. 5 other unprofitable ventures were sold. This is Jim Mitchell, Channel 8 News on the Move.
For some, blood is the gift of life, and the life you save may be your own. There's a critical need for blood across the country, and more close to home, at Parkland Hospital. At Parkland's Blood Center, Dr. Ruth Guy, who is the Associate Director of the Blood Bank, told me of the tremendous lack of blood. Most sorely lacking is the most common blood type, O positive. It is also the blood that is in greatest demand. Dr. Guy showed me the depleted stock of blood at Parkland, where temperatures keep the blood reserve at a cool 5 degrees. This morning she was faced with rows of empty shelves and waiting patients in need of blood. Dr. Guy told me that because of the shortage, patients were taken by priority and others simply bled till blood was donated. Some first-round donors looked a little bit uneasy today. Students Robin Scott and Dan Oates had a friend in an automobile accident in need of blood, so they came in today to give some of theirs. And then there was Dallas housewife Virginia Kinsey, who says, "There's really nothing to it." This is Donna Witkowski for Channel 8 News on the Move.
I think that it was a tremendous experience to stand in a stadium where 55,000 people rose to their feet and applauded the Longhorn band. It would made me even proud being a Red Raider from Lubbock. But it was a tremendous thing. And then Saturday afternoon, we went to the Bull Ring, and 10,000 people there stood and applauded and called for an encore. The band, once it had marched off, had to come back again and play 2 other numbers. People called for more. It was a tremendous display of rapport and camaraderie.
Do you feel they were just that thrilled by the band, or does it mean that Peru and America are closer together than we thought?
I think that you'll find, and I think Mr. Marcus will agree because he's been associated with Peru for many years, but the differences that we have are perhaps philosophical differences at the government level, not at the people level.